Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on Enterprise Class Agile. Over the next 45 minutes, I will discuss and show you how Blueprint can bridge the gap between your business needs and delivering your applications. A couple of housekeeping items for today's webinar. First of all, my name is Richard Plump, and I am the Director of Solution Engineers here at Blueprint. My team works extensively with our customers and prospective customers in illustrating how Blueprint can assist them with their transition to Agile processes. The audio for today's webinar is via your computer speakers. We also have a couple of Blueprint panelists on the webinar, so if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can type a question into the questions panel. Here are the agenda topics we will go through today. We'll start off with the problem and/or challenges organizations face today. We'll then look at how to use Blueprint with an Agile process. According to a recent Gartner survey last month, 50% of projects are still waterfall, 25% are iterative, and 25% Agile. As we know, Agile is fast-growing and is expecting to be dominant over the years. However, most companies are going to be in a mixed environment for a while. Here at Blueprint, we feel we provide the best solution to manage you through the transition. For the demonstration, I will show you how Blueprint coexists and is very much needed with Agile-based application delivery solutions, such as Rally, Jira, Version 1, and TFS. Again, if you have any questions along the way, please enter into the questions panel. At the end, we'll answer as many questions as we can. So let's start with the problem or challenge. What you see here is a hype cycle that Gartner releases on a regular basis. The hype cycle tracks the evolution of any technology in terms of expectation over time. Starting on the left, the different stages range from the innovation trigger, peak of inflated expectation, through the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, and finally the plateau of productivity. Let's first look at project-oriented Agile on the right. Basically, this is Agile as we most traditionally known it as, where it has proven itself, mostly, if not all, within ISVs. For example, companies like Google. And it's making inroads into IT, certainly in small to medium-sized projects within IT departments. The problem is that organizations are trying to use the project-oriented Agile approach within the enterprise, and they are struggling as IT organizations attempt to use it on larger, more complex, and often distributed projects. As you can see on the hype cycle, compared to project-oriented Agile, enterprise-class Agile is just at its beginnings of climbing the cycle. The key takeaway here is to understand that while these are both Agile at heart, they are fundamentally different, creating the Agile Gap. The difference can be seen in what we refer to as the Agile Gap, causing a disconnect between the needs of the business and the needs of IT. To understand how we bridge this gap, let's look at the bigger picture of how these two worlds interact. Agile has many characteristics. However, to give you a flavor, here are some of the characteristics. Focus forward, providing just enough detail, stories are transient, really limit work in progress, and it's really fast-paced, maximum delivery, and really minimize the ceremony. These are great principles when you focus is mainly on end-user community and the application that is being built. But something happens when you apply this to larger, more complex projects, if they are IT projects, or regulated industry with compliance needs. As the project gets large, the Agile reaction is to slice them into a small set of smaller projects, but then we need governance across them to ensure they are aligned. When we deal with IT projects, there is generally a whole host of business constraints and considerations which often aren't prevalent in ISV projects. When the industry is regulated, there's yet another layer of constraints, typically non-negotiable constraints. constraints that have business implications for not meeting them, like fines or worse. So in large, complex IT project environments, there are business realities such as, see at the top, regulatory compliance and audit, institutional memory, the need for standardization and reuse, business case and release planning, and really managing change impact and cost. Agile practices don't really provide any guidance for how to deal with these, but they must be dealt with. So what happens is the business side falls back to the traditional ways they've used to manage them. These traditional ways are not aligned with Agile practices, and the result is a gap in how the development team is working. From our experience in consultation with industry analysts, the key to solving this dilemma is how you deal with requirements on enterprise class applications. Let's focus on how Blueprint bridges the gap between business needs and application delivery. Let's step back and look at the SDLC process. Blueprint bridges the gap between business need on the left and application delivery on the right. Normally, requirements are dealt with project by project, regardless of the methodology, waterfall, agile, hybrid. With Blueprint, you can centralize and reuse information across all projects to increase standardization and consistency. Blueprint's collaboration increases alignment across the enterprise by capturing and managing the ongoing discussions about requirements. And Blueprint's reporting and analytics capability provides clear visibility into the early stages of projects through status reports for up-to-date activity, trend reports to track progression, and insight reports provide an early warning system. So the conversation has shifted from you don't need requirements if you are using Agile to requirements play a key role and are an integral part of Enterprise Agile. On the left, Dean Leffingwell, creator of Scaled Agile Framework, SAFe, illustrates that as you scale up the enterprise, there is a big need for requirements. At the team level, it's typically a small group of developers and testers working in 2-week sprints, and the team backlog is managed by a product owner. Some of these small projects probably don't need a requirement solution. But as you scale up to the program portfolio level, there could be hundreds of people across different areas of the company where you require enterprise class requirements. Dean says 70 to 85% of IT project rework is directly traceable back to poor requirements. On the right, Scott Ambler, author of Disciplined Agile Delivery, or DAD, outlines the characteristics of when you need to use a requirements management solution like Blueprint. If you have a large team, a global company with multiple divisions, compliance is an important criteria for your company, you then need Blueprint to manage your enterprise Agile requirements. So at a high level, the Blueprint approach consists of master requirements, context, specification details managed in Blueprint that you see on the left, taking the user stories from Blueprint and implementing them in the Agile Delivery Management System in the bottom middle, and test and QA, taking the user story specifications and our auto-generated test case to jumpstart the testing cycle. Let's have a look at this in a little more detail. At a business level, we have to make high-level decisions on what areas to invest in, and these are called themes. Themes then get decomposed into chunks of capabilities called epics, which are then broken into features and then into user stories. All the way down this stack, there may be non-functional requirements that need to be considered and met by the solution. On the right, there may be other context or elaboration required. For example, at the theme and epic level, you could use business process diagrams or information models to help analyze the problem being solved. For features and user stories, you could use use cases, UI mockups, storyboards, and others to help analyze the solution. Here are a couple of examples of enterprise agile requirements. When you get into very large, complex projects, a backlog of user stories tends not to instill high-level overall picture of what the system is supposed to do. This gets back to one of the deficiencies I mentioned at the beginning of user stories lacking an ability to abstract up. The example on the left, we are using a use case diagram to express how the system is to function at a higher level and how user stories can be derived from them. Use cases are a great mechanism for abstracting up. There are several publications talking about this technique on how to do this. Essentially, it's based on one or more use case scenarios being the basis for a user story. The example on the right shows how you can use use cases as a way to provide additional detail and elaborate on any of the more complex user stories. In this way, they can be used to help clarify, reduce miscommunication, and often provide an early indication of whether a story is too big and needs to be split. By the way, both of these examples are consistent with the Scaled Agile framework by Dean Leffingwell. Here's how one of our customers is using Blueprint to bridge the gap. To start, they derive user stories from epics. Stories are synced with their application delivery system, where they create tasks from the user stories. Next, they have mandated that every user story must have a use case. They then create UI mockups and use these mockups to run a visual simulation and or string them together in one or more storyboards. A key component of all of this is Blueprint's ability to provide end-to-end traceability. Finally, they use another key feature of Blueprint, which is the ability to automatically generate all the tests from the use cases. This essentially becomes, for them, the acceptance criteria. So based on our experience of many of our customers, like the one I just showed you, Blueprint has created Blueprint for Enterprise Agile. It is an approach specifically for how to do requirements on an enterprise-scale Agile project. It is totally consistent with DAD and SAFe frameworks discussed earlier, and for that matter, it is compatible with Scrum and other approaches as well. In very broad terms, it describes how to leverage requirements to give business the things it needs, such as compliance, business cases, release planning, and so on, while at the same time allowing the development team to be agile. Having a look at a high-level view of our integration architecture, Blueprint and the ALM systems are endpoints. Centralized Integration Manager takes care of the integration, real-time synchronization, conflict resolution, error handling, and job scheduling. And we've partnered with OpsHub to deliver this enterprise-class integration. From a process point of view, here are the Blueprint and Agile ALM touch points. On the left, Blueprint is used to capture not just the business functional and non-functional needs, but also the high-level process and context. Blueprint also provides the rich visualization and prototyping of storyboards, mockups, and use cases to drive alignment and collaboration with your business stakeholders. From here, the detailed user stories are distilled, and then bidirectional integration with Agile ALM solutions allows user stories or features to be created and updated in either system, and for this information to always stay in sync. So before we get into the demonstration, to recap, today's Agile solutions really enable organizations to execute on these Agile principles but leaves a gap with the business need. And here at Blueprint, we bridge this gap by providing enterprise RDM solution. So business requirements and why survive the product. What I mean by this is knowing why we did and what we did. So when a solution is in maintenance mode, we know how a bug fix patch will impact other parts. It allows engagement of non-development users. The need to abstract the solution and drive feedback from the business early and often with collaboration. Trace back to business objectives, needs, or rules. Traceability is the most important part of requirements. It tells us why we are doing something. And Blueprint gives you traceability from user stories to business needs, really providing that end-to-end traceability. Another benefit with Blueprint is it encourages standardization and reuse across projects. In most organizations, Agile projects are only part of the projects. Blueprint lets all projects leverage the same information, regardless of the methodology. So we support distributed teams with our web-based cloud repository solution. Provide complete audit to support regulatory and governance requirements. You need to ensure that everything meets regulation and that it's auditable. And finally, support a mixed environment and integrates with traditional testing processes. Let's now take a look at the Blueprint application. So the story so far, here at Almonte Bank, we're undergoing a credit application upgrade project using Agile development methodologies. We've just completed our latest sprint, and during the sprint demo that you see on the left, Bob, our stakeholder, brought up a new compliance issue brought to his attention by the legal department. Bob has forwarded this new need to Amy, who is our product manager. Using Blueprint, Amy will capture this need, perform an analysis to make sure this won't impact anything else, and to add a new story to the backlog. With our ALM integration, Paul, the product owner, will take this new story, estimate it, plan it, and gather any feedback to get it into the next sprint. So let me switch over to the Blueprint solution. So as Amy, the product manager, I would sign into Blueprint, and this is my home page. And just to give you a little tour of the home page, it's really broken down into three main areas. On the left, I have the ability to open up a project or have a list of my recent places I've been. In the middle area, it shows you any reviews that I might be part of, if I've indicated any artifacts of being favorite, or anyone's shared any artifacts with me. And on the right is your discussion feed that keeps you up to date as many potential users interact with requirements. So let's first start off with looking at the business need that was created for Bob that came out of that sprint demo. On the left, you see my Project Explorer and my project called Credit Application Upgrade. And I have two main folders here. One that's capturing all my business side needs, and the other is my solution side, capturing my features and product backlogs. In the middle area is the business need that Bob requires. So with Blueprint, you can configure the various requirement types and the attributes that are assigned to each requirement. This allows us to standardize on requirement creation and the necessary data that we collect, and really helps provide consistency and efficiency throughout the process. So in the top part, you can see the different properties that we've set up with drop-downs. This is a business need. At the bottom is my description. So the customer must be informed that applying for a credit card can affect their FICO scores. Because of this, we must prompt applicants to agree to this FICO check and provide them a link to the terms and conditions. Notice up in the top right here, there's a comment indicator. which is a visual cue that there's some running commentary on this. That down. And you can see an email thread or a collaboration thread between Amy, the product manager, and Bob, our business stakeholder. And Amy asks, what happens if a user does not agree to the credit check? And Bob's response is, they must need to reply to the credit, they must agree to that credit check. So if I wanted to close the loop or put in a comment, I can just simply reply and go at Bob, thanks for this. I will ensure it gets done. And I can publish that response. Before we look at creating a user story to then create the backlog, let's have a look at the overall process diagram to determine where this need fits into the larger process. Here we have a business process diagram that was created to visually identify the credit card application process. So Blueprint not only supports the creation and management of textual requirements, but also provides a rich set of graphical editors to capture graphical requirements as well. So within my overall credit card application process, you can see I have my different swim lanes and what the customer needs to do when they're applying for a credit card, online or in person. Notice here I have another visual indicator in the top right, and that indicates that this business process diagram is being traced to a functional requirement. So my overall business process diagram is being traced to this functional requirement. When I look at where this business need fits, I notice that it fits within the enter residential information, and I also have a trace to that. So I can click on that trace, and it shows me that this task within my business process diagram has a detailed trace to a UI mockup and a use case diagram. So by doing this, I know that I need to trace my business need to this point. So I can come out here and browse, and by browsing I can see here's my business need, and I simply drag and drop it to that task to create that trace. And now not only the mock-up and the user flow is traced, but also my business need. So traceability is one of the key functional areas that companies look to when improving their requirements definition process. We've been told many times by our customers and potential customers really like the fact that we can trace to a granular level of detail. Again, this is unique to Blueprint in the requirements definition and management space, that detail level traceability. So now that I've created the need and traced it to my overall process for credit cards, I now want to go and look at, are there any other areas that could be impacted based on this new need? I can simply come over here to my user mockup, and it will show me my UI mockup for applying for the credit card, and this is where the business need needs to come in. So within our capabilities, I can come in here and modify and add to it. So simply drag and drop a checkbox and type in, I agree to have my FICO credit score checked. And then adding to that, and I can also come in here and put in different callouts and say, must be create a if checkbox not selected. Again, so I can come in here, I can share this with my team, we can preview it and look at all the different information. But at this point, I feel that I'm pretty good that my business need has been traced to my overall credit card application process, and I've modified the UI mockup to include that FICO credit check. So the next thing I'm going to do is now create the user story that we can then have integrated with our Agile ALM solution. So over here, well, we talked about our different business folders. I'm going to go into my solutions area, and under product backlog, I'm going to add a new product backlog item here. So for that, I simply can just add a new, by right mouse click, a new user story. We'll just give it a new name. And we're going to call this a credit check agreement. And I can simply come in here and put in my user story. So as a user, I want to be prompted of any credit checks that may occur or that may affect my FICO score, so that I can opt in or out. And you can see we have spell check for my spelling capabilities. So at this point here, I've created the user story. I can go in to look at it in a detail view. Notice here that the different types of properties that we're tracking, story point, story rank, the iteration, what's the state of the story. Again, that will all be populated when Paul, the product owner, is working in the Agile solution. At this point here, I can also provide some additional detail for Paul, the product owner. I can add an inline trace and come in and include the actual UI mockup. It is one option I can do, or I can go to a specific one here and look at, collecting that residential information, and provides a link that will also get sent downstream. So once I've completed that, I can simply publish this information, and I've now added a user story within Blueprint. I can also come in here and say, you know what, I need to trace this user story to my business need. Again, so using our search capabilities, I can go out and search credit check, grab that credit check business need, and drag it over here to my user story and trace to it. So not only does my new user story that I just created have a trace to the mock-up, it also has a trace to my business need. So let's just recap of what we've done so far. We started off with getting a new business need, and within Blueprint, Amy added that business need, performed any analysis, any impact analysis on what other requirements or areas might be affected. From there, we created some traces to artifacts and also did some detailed traces. We created a new user story, and we added that story to the backlog. So the Blueprint integration manager capabilities are keeping Blueprint, and in my demo world here, I'm using version 1 in sync. So what I'm going to do now is change roles from Amy, the product manager, to Paul, the product owner. And I'm also switching systems. So what you're looking at here is Paul, the product owner, who's responsible inside version 1. And within the product planning area, I'm looking at my backlog of items. So by simply refreshing my screen here, you can notice at the bottom here this credit check agreement and today's date of how our integration capabilities kept the user story created in Blueprint in sync with the product backlog within version 1. So I can come into this credit check agreement, open it up. I can see the comment that was put in. I can see the inline trace to that user mockup. So if I wanted to click on that, I could actually visually see that. And then as Paul, the product owner, I want to then look at it, plan it, estimate it. I'm going to put it into sprint 3, and I believe it's going to be 8 points, and the story is accepted. So again, adding this information into that. Paul might have a comment back that we want to be able to also keep in sync with Blueprint. So I can come into, again, this product backlog item and add a comment for the team. So I can say, you know, we have planned and estimated the story for the next sprint. Thanks for sending the UI mockup. I must get better at typing. And then I can just click on share. That information is put in here with the backlog item, but then will be synced with Blueprint and the user story that we just created. Again, just to recap, estimated the new story, provided all the pertinent information, and now with our integration capabilities, it is now syncing up the information that you wanted to keep in sync between the two solutions. So back in Blueprint, I can come in here and look at this information and keeping those two areas in sync. Okay. The next area that I wanted to go through is really look at, along with keeping in sync with at the user story level, the ability for Blueprint really enhances your application delivery solution by providing some additional details or additional capabilities. So the first thing I want to look at is our ability to provide use cases and what we call advanced use case modeling. So what I mean by advanced is the ability to have graphical process flow along with the text. Like most companies provide simple textual use cases that you see here on the left. We feel people are really just tired of reading and having to always check that alternate flow to see what my use case is all about. So with Blueprint, we take it to the next level and provide the side-by-side capability of textual and a graphical process flow. And really, studies have shown there's a big increase in comprehension and retaining the information when you use visuals. So this use case looks at when you're applying for a credit card, the steps of having to collect that residential information. Now, some of the things I can do here is I can come in here and add a new step. I can do it on the process flow diagram or on the textual side. So in this example, I'm going to add an internal step that you can see that it adds here, and it automatically on the left keeps it in sync. So I can type on either side and they'll both stay in sync. So I can come in here and say system displays the required fields not filled in. And you can see how it keeps both sides in sync. Notice here in my process flow that I have these little attachments to it, and these are my user mockups that I can attach and assign to each step. So I can come in here and add a step or set a UI mockup and come in here and look at the actual step that I want to put in. So I'm going to this one step, I'm actually going to add that UI mockup screen. So from here, I now want to be able to visually prototype out my use case. So instead of printing off, a business requirement document and having to read through a couple hundred pages, what I'm doing right now is launching our simulation capabilities that's really taking my UI mockups and my use case definitions and actors and putting it into a visual prototype for me. So the ability to interact visually and instantly find any issues or missed requirements is really critical to drive rework out of the process. It's really a big benefit for organizations looking at implementing enterprise class requirement solution. And we really feel that the simulation visual prototyping capability is a key differentiator over our competitors. So looking at this, you can see the UI mockup on the left, my process flow of the use case on the right, and at the bottom are the steps that the actor, in this case, or what the system steps are going to be. So I can come in here and I start off, and the system displays my application residential address information, and you can see at the bottom the customer fills out the remainder of the application, or the customer clicks cancel. And by doing this, you can see all the information here. And I can come in here and start keying in the information. I guess I shouldn't put in my home address and phone number. Select all the information. I'm an owner. My phone number is, excuse me, and go through and select all the information. And once I've finished that, I click on Next, and it takes me through the process. In this case, it's going to submit it, bring it back, and tell me that my application has been submitted successfully. Click on the Finish button, and now I'm done. Okay, so let's spend a couple of minutes, and then we'll get into some Q&A on some reporting capabilities within the Blueprints solution. So the first thing I wanted to show you is really our traceability trace matrix, which really allows us to ensure that we have proper coverage analysis and really avoid any gaps between the needs of the business and the user stories. And this is really key where we really want to avoid any rework due to missing requirements. So to go through that, and again, a lot of organizations now have to do this manually. So we provide this in product where I can simply come in here and indicate for my rows I want to have my business needs, and as my columns I want to look at my user stories and product backlog. And by running that information, you can see here I have my business needs going down and I have my user stories going across the top, and the red is indicating if I have any gaps that I wanted to do. So the ability for, again, a lot of different trace strategies you have within Blueprint, and you can get down to tasks within different overall processes, but the ability to have this traceability matrix in product is very key. The other area of reporting that I want to talk about is Blueprint's management reporting and analytics capability. As I touched on earlier, we provide different types of reports from status, trends to insight, and it really unlocks information that usually is not available at the early phases of a project, making it visible, and it gives IT leaders and BAs the ability to steer projects in the right direction from the outset. And it's really key information that drives accountability and a basis for sustainable improvement. Here's an example that I wanted to share with you of requirement status by implementation type. If you're implementing a packaged software, and let's say in the top left there, the implementation type is configuration, customization, or out of the box, and you might have it set that out of the box should be 75%, configuration 15%, and customization 10%. You can see these numbers up here, and you're lower in certain areas. Your customization is higher. So if you look over to the right, you notice in this example, it's my claim center processes that seems to have a higher level of customization. And then at the bottom, you can drill down into different sub-processes within the claim center that points out that the new entry claim process, we seem to have a lot of customization. So it provides you that information that you can then look into further. Maybe you need to investigate it, email the project manager to see what's going on. Okay, so let's move on to some Q&A. And let me just take a couple seconds, and hopefully lots of questions went into the questions panel, and the panelists are provided some answers there. But let me pick a couple out that we can walk through. Okay, so here's a question that we have, and we're starting our first medium and large product using an agile approach. For us, it's already taking a lot of change to transform our development group. We're thinking of just doing requirements same as we've always had for the first time. Would you recommend this is really the question. And you are right, there is risk associated with trying to take on too much change all at once. Again, just like people, different organizations have different tolerance levels for risk, some being more conservative than others. You actually have some options, though, instead of going with these two extremes. For example, you could invest in doing all the requirements at a high level up front, basically to define your scope and get buy-in, then leave the work of detailing each of the items to be done during sprints. There are many organizations which are really taking this hybrid approach, so it seems to be a good compromise. Another question we have here is, we have Rally, why do we need Blueprint? Well, that's a good question, and hopefully through this this webinar here, I brought up some good points where you would think why you would need Blueprint. But let me answer this by using an analogy. First of all, when you build a house, you need a set of blueprints that describe what you're building. And then you need a work plan to describe the work needed to build it, and something to use to track progress. So in our world, Blueprint does the blueprints, and Rally basically covers the work plan part, the tracking of assignments and tasks, the burn down charts, and so on. Again, I always like to say that it's possible to build a doghouse with blueprints, and kind of like using Rally with user stories, but you wouldn't dream of building an apartment or a house without having any blueprints. And so again, Blueprint defines what you're building, and really Rally manages and tracks the work. And as you've seen, we have great integration that connects the two solutions, not only Blueprint and Rally, but Blueprint and Jira, TFS, and version 1, as I showed you earlier. Let me check for another question here. Here's another question. Our Agile projects still have an upfront phase where we scope out the release, and we basically have phases at the end to stabilize the product and do a lot of preparation before we release. I know this isn't pure Agile, but is it really that different from what others do? Really, from what I've seen in the industry, this is really the most popular pattern. That is, bookend the process. I call it an on-ramp and an off-ramp, with classic Agile happenings in between. And really, for many organizations, this is the process they've stable on, and it works well for them. Look at a couple more questions here. We have a very distributed team, distributed teams and stakeholders. I know close collaboration is key to making Agile successful. How do your customers deal with this? This is really one of the main reasons companies doing highly distributed development get Blueprint. Again, along with the traceability and a lot of the other core features. Blueprint can be deployed as a cloud-based solution so everyone can access it no matter where they're located. So that's very key. We also have unique multi-user locking scheme that allows users to work naturally, so they're not corrupting each other's work. We have inline discussions that are heavily used for team collaboration features. So we do have users working directly in Blueprint, but we also can send discussions to people outside of Blueprint, to their mobile device via email. So we do have a lot of collaboration capabilities for that. Okay, let me, getting up on the time here, let me take one more question, and then I got a couple other slides to share with you. So this question says, we have lots of projects, some waterfall, some Agile, some in between. Even though they look quite different, they're actually building a lot of the same functionality in the end. Do you have any capability to help us share or reuse work products across these projects? Very good question, and the answer is yes. Blueprint has an inherent reuse feature that allows you to reuse requirement artifacts within and across different projects, and that's very key, the ability to do that across different projects. So thank you for your time today, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.